the Vatican and the Catholic Church, and then the whole, situation becomes instantaneously very much different,
It does, and ultimately, you see, this has been proven. This has been, hands down proven. I mean, Avro Manhattan, now you have more recently John Phelps. There's not a stone that's been left unturned in the research community proving that the Vatican has not only been in cahoots with the Soviets, with Mussolini, with the fascists, Russia, with Hitler. This has all been right up, clearly made into plain view as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not talking about Roman Catholics, of course, endorsing any of this. This is not what we mean. The Vatican is an institution. It's a state within a state. It's a political edifice.
Yeah.
But of course, those people who've tracked all of this, financial, economic, militaristic sort of goings on, that's great. My work focuses more on their mind control, the whole other psychodynamics.
Right.
Of the way that they might be controlling man, and what it is in man also that allows himself to be, so deceived like this.
Do the clergymen know that they're, consciously deceiving people?
For the most part, yeah. For the most part, they do. I mean, I have no problem understanding that because I've come from Belfast, where it's very flagrant. That's not every person. There are true Christians out there who believe in Christ, and they think they're absolutely sure that the moral code, the Mosaic commandments, etc., is the way to go. There's I don't have an argument with that. I don't have an argument with virtue. I don't have an argument with morality. I don't have an argument with the Bible per se. It's just a book. It's what's been done in the name of God and in the name of that book. You see, don't forget that we can split hairs and say, isn't it really sad? Not that Christianity exists, but isn't it sad that man needs to be promised an eternal paradise, meaning an eternal reward after he's dead, in order to stop him from doing the most cruel and sadistic acts while he's alive? I mean, he doesn't do it of his own nature because it's easy that some, nice religion can just come along and just calmly remind people, be moral, don't do bad things. No. You have to create an entire promissory web and really insinuate into human beings that you're going to live forever after you're dead and you will have endless reward. So for goodness sake, for God's sake, don't do evil things now. And man sits there thinking, well, chewing his bone beside the fire. Well, I guess, all right then. I'll buy into that. Maybe I can, be less sadistic, less, less horrific, less brutal. Mm. But it's so, to me, it's outrageous that such a thing would have to be concocted in order to get man to be virtuous. Is man not virtuous, or is there perhaps some other way, a better way of bringing out that virtue? Or is it probably just better to face facts and realize, it's not going to happen? Instead of concocting this lie mechanism that says, okay, we'll give you this if you do this. If you do this, we'll give you that,
It's a false virtue. It's a virtue that maybe have been put upon man, maybe at the wrong time also then, in a way.
Yeah. It's a virtue that is compelled. It's a virtue that is not articulated to his deeper drives. It's basically an enforcement. It's basically a commandment, as they say, meaning from outside. You have external virtue, just show external virtue, and you'll get, basically a spiritual reward for it. Just conform. It's a form of conformity. It's not like the Socratic way or the Zen way or the mystical way. It's not about man learning. I mean, absolutely intimately learning the secret that if you harm another, you harm yourself, like Socrates said. Yeah. It's not about man being taught to have such an awareness of the connections between psychic and spiritual energy that they understand that to, kill animals or to, hurt the earth or to hurt other people is devastating to your own spirit. That would be then where the real virtue would arise. No, this is a draconian, it's not even right to even call it virtue. It's more just a convention, is probably a better word, social convention.
Yeah.
But the thing is, going back to your question about whether the clergy are conscious, I believe for the very most part they are. 9 times out of 10 they are. But remember, if you work in a chocolate factory, you're probably the last person who'll eat chocolate, right? Because you're sick of it, because you see it all day long.
Yeah.
So just because these people work within the religion and they know that it's full of nonsense, it's all lies, or not lies, it's Astro-Theology, as my work has proven, doesn't mean that they themselves eat off that same plate.
Right.
That's just a plate that's good for everyone else. They're hypocrites. And the interesting thing about the word hypocrite is that the word actually was a word in Greece that simply meant actor. Did you know that? It just meant actor on a stage.
Really?
That's where the word comes from. It just meant a person who wears a mask, or a person who is playing a part that's been scripted for them by an unseen playwright. Yeah.
That's interesting.
So, in my work I've talked about these unseen playwrights and the Atonists and all. Then we have this coterie who is literally without virtue. They may have this conventional morality. They may have the trappings, the external lineaments of morality and all of this, and the holier than thou, sanctimonious cover. But these are the hypocrites. They actually are just simply actors, and they get a kick out of it. That's fine. They don't have to eat the chocolate. They don't have to eat the same dishes the people in the theater. This is And I mean, we even need to look if you do your homework in the Jewish tradition, you'll know that the Jews and the original Hebrew rabbis, they all knew about the existence of the Zodiac. They even call it Latin is I think it's a rota signorum, the wheel of signs, the wheel of the signs. The Jewish and the Christian priests absolutely know that their religion is an outgrowth of solar cultism, and they know that, and they also know that the cultism's origins is Irish and not necessarily Egyptian only. Believe me, it's taken centuries for them to even admit, and of course they haven't admitted it. It's scientists who have discovered this. It's archaeologists who've discovered the importance of Egypt.
Right.
So it's even taken the clergy didn't come along and tell us all of this. Hell, they wouldn't have even told us that the world was circular. They'd have you happily believing it was flat, and that devils are going to steal your body if you have sex with somebody outside marriage and all that stuff. They'd be happy to keep us all in that framework, of fear and guilt and ignorance. So it's not that they've come running to us to tell us about the wonderful role of the Egyptians in Christianity. That's been brought out by other scholars.
Right.
And they're certainly never going to admit the role of Ireland, So it's for people like ourselves to start asking the questions and not just blindly accepting all this.
Will things change? I mean, is there hope that tomorrow we can be rid of this poison then?
Well, it's only like the poet Shelley said. This is the Victorian poet Shelley. He said, absolutely, when the last king is strangled with the guts of the last priest. And I look around the world today and don't see any other possible, scenario there. It literally will be, because remember, these actors love the gig, and they're not going to give up of their own free will. They do know what they're doing. They do know that they've cannibalized the ancient traditions, but waiting for them to fold up. That's like Colonel James Bogright said, if you're waiting for Lord Rothschild to roll up his little red carpet and run off back to Europe and say, hey, boss, we couldn't handle it, you may have a long, long wait.
Right.
And believe me, these princes and religious types are, they're not going anywhere. So as Shelley said, the last king strangled with the guts of the last priest. This is basically what you're going to have to wait for. Unless people start, unless we do understand what Jordan and myself are saying and end this and really bring the truth home to these people. But also, you see, because remember, man needs religion because man is not doing his own homework. So the reason why men are into theology is because they're not into psychology. And unfortunately, man needs to be led. He may be intellectually and technically developed, but he's not emotionally or psychologically developed. He's very, in fact, infantile and very fragile on those levels, like a small child. This is unfortunately what we find in a study of mankind, that emotionally they're very backward. So, this priestarchy has nothing to fear. This priesthood is there for people as soon as they're traumatized, as soon as any kind of upset comes to them emotionally, you see. Any kind of upset in the domestic sphere, or even now, of course, in the political sphere, where there's so much trauma going around, all being designed to happen, to force people back into the churches. And even though we said earlier in the program about, that there are agnostics and there are atheists, let us not forget for a moment that right now the demographics is up again, especially in an American context. People are flooding back to churches. They're flooding back not only to decent churches, but to these, evangelists who are maniacs. People are flooding back to listen to, it's incredible that we have an influx again and a rising interest in the church.
The economics is a little bit down. Things are not maybe on the up and up on all fronts, and then people potentially they go back to the old patterns, because that's routine, I guess, again, falling into that.
That's right. Exactly. But let us never forget, and of course this makes these evangelists, incredibly happy, and also the fact that nobody refutes them. Everybody believes every piece of rubbish they say. Because remember, a good